Nikola Tesla tried to give the entire world free wireless electricity. That is the core of what I want to explain here. Not as a rumor, not as a myth, as a documented historical attempt that was real, that showed results, and that was stopped. What happened after it was stopped is where things get complicated. And I want to walk through all of it clearly. Let me start with who Tesla actually was, because that matters for understanding why this project was even possible. Tesla was not a trial-and-error inventor. Thomas Edison, who employed Tesla briefly in the 1880s before they had a bitter professional split, worked by brute force. He tried thousands of combinations until something worked. Tesla did not work that way. He built entire machines inside his head, complete mental models. He ran simulations in his imagination, checked for errors, corrected them, and only then began physical construction. By the time his hands touched the materials, he already knew the outcome. His peers found this genuinely impossible to understand. I find it worth noting because it explains why Wardenclyffe Tower was not guesswork. Tesla was not experimenting blindly. He believed he already knew it would work. Now, Wardenclyffe Tower. That is the correct spelling. The topic input calls it Wardenclyffe or Wardenclyffe in places. But the confirmed historical name is Wardenclyffe. It was located in Shoreham on Long Island, New York. Construction began around 1901. The structure was about 187 feet tall, wooden lattice framework rising from flat coastal land, topped with a large copper-covered dome. To people who saw it from a distance, it looked like nothing that had ever been built in America before. Some described it as an industrial cathedral. What I understand about the design is that it was not just a tall tower. It was one half of a planetary electrical circuit. The money behind it came from J.P. Morgan. This is confirmed. Morgan was arguably the most powerful financier in American history at that time. He had reorganized American railroads, controlled major portions of the steel industry, and in 1895 personally stepped in to prevent the United States Treasury from collapsing. When Morgan put money behind a project, it moved. He invested approximately $150,000 in Wardenclyffe. In today's terms, that is equivalent to several $1,000,000. What Morgan believed he was funding was a wireless telegraphy system, a technology to send messages through the air without physical cables. That was a real commercial race at the time. In December 1901, Guglielmo Marconi, working in Europe, had transmitted the letter S in Morse code across the Atlantic Ocean. The race to dominate wireless communication was genuinely on. Morgan understood that investment. But here is the part Morgan did not fully know. Tesla had told him only part of the plan. Tesla's actual goal was not just to send messages. He wanted to transmit electrical power itself, not to a specific paying customer, to anyone, to everyone, anywhere on Earth. If you had a receiver tuned to the right frequency, you could pull electricity from the system for free. No wires, no utility company, no monthly bill. Free electrical power for the entire planet. The way I understand his thinking is this. Tesla believed the Earth itself was a giant electrical conductor. He believed that if you introduced energy into the planet at a specific resonant frequency, that energy would travel through the Earth the same way current travels through a copper wire in a normal circuit. You could then pull that energy back out at any point on the planet using a receiver tuned to the same frequency. The Earth would be the wire. The whole planet would be the circuit. This was not pure theory without any basis. Between 1899 and 1900, Tesla ran large-scale experiments at a specially built laboratory in Colorado Springs, Colorado. This is confirmed. At Colorado Springs, he generated artificial lightning bolts over 100 feet long. He claimed to have transmitted electrical energy wirelessly across distances of several miles. He observed that the Earth appeared to respond to his oscillator, that the planet had natural resonant frequencies. Colorado Springs convinced him that Wardenclyffe was not just theoretically possible, it was practically achievable. Under the tower itself, Tesla had workers dig tunnels and chambers extending deep into the ground. These were not structural supports. They were functional parts of the transmission system. Iron pipes were sunk down into the water table below the site. Tesla described this as creating an electrical grip on the planet. The concept was that when the tower's coils were powered up, energy would push downward through the ground system, while the dome simultaneously projected a matching electrical field upward into the atmosphere. Earth below and sky above would act as two terminals of a planetary-scale circuit. Now, the accounts of what was tested during lower power trials are where I have to be careful about sourcing. The topic input references testimony from a female assistant who allegedly recorded her account before her death in 1957. I want to be honest with you. I cannot independently verify that specific recording or confirm her name because the topic input acknowledges she was deliberately left out of official records. What I can tell you is that the claims in that account are consistent with what Tesla himself documented in his published writings and Colorado Springs notes. He described wirelessly illuminating bulbs at distances. He described the Earth responding to his oscillator. Those parts are on record in his own words. What I find significant is what the wireless power system meant for the people who already owned the electrical infrastructure. J.P. Morgan and his associates had spent enormous capital building the power grid, miles of copper wire, transformer stations, billing systems, metering equipment. All of that was a business model built on the fact that electricity traveled through wires that someone owned and controlled. If power arrived wirelessly from a broadcast tower, there was no way to charge people per unit of energy used. No meter, no bill, no profit from distribution. Every mile of wire became worthless. Every utility company billing structure became worthless overnight. To me, that is the key thing to understand about why this project was threatening. Tesla was not trying to harm anyone. He wanted to serve everyone. But the world he was trying to serve was structured around controlling the flow of energy. Wireless power did not just change the technology. It eliminated the control entirely. By 1903, Tesla was receiving pressure to slow down, to stay within what his backers had approved, to be practical. He ignored every warning. The accounts of the high-capacity test in spring 1903 come primarily from the assistant's alleged testimony and from corroborating historical records I will describe in a moment. According to those accounts, during the full power test, The dome released a sustained discharge of electricity into the sky. Not a flash, a sustained arc that held in the air. People living miles away reported the sky above Shoreham lit up unlike anything they had seen. Buildings several miles away, with no electrical connection, reportedly glowed. Lamps flickered on without any power source. Then, the system began behaving in a way that was not planned. Gauges pushed past their highest calibrated positions. Telegraph operators across Long Island reported complete signal failure. Some stations lost power entirely. The resonance between the tower's coils and the Earth's electrical field had become self-amplifying rather than stable. Too much current was returning through the ground circuit faster than the regulators could manage. Overheating began in the copper windings. Smoke appeared near a generator. The power was cut. Now here is where I want to talk about the corroborating data, because this is where skeptics need to pay attention. In the early 2000s, a historian of electrical engineering located archived telegraph logs from Long Island and the eastern seaboard. Entries dated to the same night described electromagnetic disturbances of unknown origin across multiple stations. Operators wrote that signals had been jammed by continuous interference, not storm static, not atmospheric noise, something that behaved as though the ground itself had been electrified. Compass needles and measuring instruments at multiple sites behaved erratically during the same time window. Records from magnetic observatories on both sides of the Atlantic logged an unexplained electromagnetic pulse during that same hour. The pulse pattern was consistent with the resonant frequency Tesla had documented in his Colorado Springs notes. The specific frequency he believed corresponded to the Earth's natural electrical standing wave. When modern physicists mapped those historical readings geographically, the disturbances formed a wave pattern centered on Shoreham, New York, the location of Wardenclyffe Tower. The anomaly lasted more than 40 minutes before fading. No thunderstorms, no solar flares, no geomagnetic events were recorded that night. It is cataloged officially as an anomalous terrestrial resonance event. That is the technical language for we don't know what caused it. To me, this is the part that makes the whole story harder to dismiss. The disturbances were real. They were recorded independently. They were centered on the right location. And they matched the right frequency. A declassified file from the National Defense Research Committee, the wartime scientific agency that coordinated American weapons research during World War II, contained a memo referencing a persistent geophysical signal consistent with Tesla's predicted resonant frequency. The memo implied in careful bureaucratic language that the 1903 Wardenclyffe discharge may have left a measurable effect in the electrical properties of the Earth's upper crust, a signal that had not fully disappeared decades later. Some scientists who examined that file suggested that Tesla had temporarily energized a natural electrical pathway already present in the planet, and that the resonance did not end when he cut the power. It weakened slowly, but it did not stop. If that is accurate, what Tesla initiated that night did not fully end. It slowed, but something of what he started kept going. What happened next to the project is documented and confirmed. Within days of the test, J.P. Morgan withdrew all financial support. No extended negotiation. No restructured deal. The money simply stopped. Without capital, Tesla could not pay his workers. Staff left. Material deliveries stopped. Construction froze. The most advanced wireless energy project ever attempted collapsed almost immediately after its most successful test. Then government officials began arriving. Some described their visits as safety inspections. Some referenced patent compliance or electrical code issues. The language was procedural, but the behavior, according to later accounts, did not match routine inspection. These visitors moved through Tesla's restricted workspaces without standard identification. They examined equipment. They went through research materials Tesla considered his most sensitive documentation. Then, crates began to be removed from the facility. Large wooden crates. Inside them were precision instruments, custom components built specifically for wireless energy transmission, and Tesla's personal laboratory journals, his technical drawings, his research notes. These documents contain the complete operational specifications for how Wardenclyffe worked, the specific frequencies, the ground coupling measurements, the atmospheric transmission calculations, the designs for receiver stations that would have completed the global network. Without those documents, the system could not be rebuilt from scratch. No agency publicly acknowledged removing anything. No receipts were issued. No press statements. No accountability record exists. Wardenclyffe Tower stood unused for years. It was demolished in 1917, reportedly to settle debts. Some researchers have noted the timing. Tesla was being financially isolated throughout this period. The demolition removed the last physical structure anyone could study. Tesla died alone in room 327 of the New Yorker Hotel on January 7, 1943. His finances had been exhausted for years. What remained of his work was locked in trunks and filing cabinets in his hotel room. When he was found, government representatives arrived within hours. Not only local police, officials from an agency called the Office of Alien Property. This is where I want to flag something specific. The Office of Alien Property existed to manage assets belonging to foreign nationals during wartime. Tesla had been a naturalized American citizen since 1891. He held that citizenship for over 50 years at the time of his death. The legal basis for the Office of Alien Property to take jurisdiction over his estate is, at minimum, legally questionable. Several Tesla researchers and legal scholars have noted this for decades. At the time, no legal challenge was mounted. The office sealed his room and removed everything. Thousands of pages of notebooks, technical drawings, correspondence, unfinished invention documentation. Witnesses reported that trunks were removed under armed escort. Within one day, everything Tesla owned had been taken into government custody. When the formal inventory the Office of Alien Property produced was later reviewed by FBI analysts and military engineers, something was missing. The files describing Tesla's wireless power transmission system, the circuit diagrams, the field strength measurements, the conductivity calculations from the Wardenclyffe period. They were not listed as destroyed. They were not listed as lost. They were described as relocated. No destination was specified. No transfer documentation has ever been publicly released. In the 1980s, a batch of declassified FBI files released through Freedom of Information requests included inventory references to Wardenclyffe-related documents. They were annotated again with the same word, relocated. A separate memo confirmed that a physicist from the National Defense Research Committee had reviewed Tesla's work shortly after his death and noted its potential value to national defense. No original notebooks were attached to the memo. None have since appeared publicly. What I understand from all of this is a clear pattern. The demonstration worked. The funding was cut within days. The materials were removed without documentation. The documents were relocated to an unspecified destination. Every person who was physically present kept silent, and the official records have a hole exactly where the most important technical information should be. Tesla is reported to have said, after the funding was cut, that they realized it worked, and that is why they stopped it. He never identified who they were. Given what followed, the people with the most to lose from wireless free power, the financiers who owned the electrical infrastructure, the governments who understood that energy control was geopolitical leverage, were not difficult to identify by function, even without names. Modern researchers who have tested the ground at the former Wardenclyffe site report faint electrical fluctuations at frequencies consistent with what Tesla documented in his surviving notes. The signals are small, close to the boundary of reliable detection. Some scientists attribute them to interference from nearby power infrastructure. Others argue the readings are genuine remnants of something that started in 1903. The question remains open. The data is not conclusive, but it is also not zero. Here is what I think is worth taking seriously. The historical record around Wardenclyffe is not a conspiracy theory floating in the air with no support. The electromagnetic anomalies are in the archived telegraph logs. The pulse data is in the magnetic observatory records. The removal of materials is in the property inventory from the Office of Alien Property. The legal irregularity of that office taking a citizen's property is documented and noted by legal scholars. The FBI files referencing relocated Wardenclyffe documents are real declassified records. What I cannot tell you with certainty is what exactly happened the night of that test, because the primary witness accounts come from sources that are difficult to independently verify in full detail. What I can tell you is that the corroborating physical data supports the broad conclusion. Something major happened at that site that night. The records show it. The silence of everyone involved is its own kind of record. For me, the clearest way to think about this is simple. Tesla built something that worked. The people who had the most to lose from it working made sure it stopped. The documents that would allow someone to rebuild it were taken and never returned. And the ground where it once stood still registers at the frequency Tesla said it would. That is not legend. That is what the available record actually shows. So the main thing I take from all of this is that the suppression of Wardenclyffe was not random. It was fast, it was coordinated, and it was thorough. Whether you believe Tesla's full vision was achievable at planetary scale or not, The effort to stop it tells you everything about how seriously the people in power took the possibility that it